Hi, so welcome to this episode where I, the listening detective, get to interview the wonderful Helen Rowe, author of Eliminating Poverty in Britain. So welcome, Helen.
Thank you.
And today's subject, we're talking about how do you actually put my teeth back in, eliminate poverty in Britain. And if you haven't already seen it, there is another video on the channel that says why end poverty in Britain. Please check that out. If you're thinking, well, it doesn't affect me, I'm fine, then maybe you'd be surprised to find out how it does affect you. But today we're talking about, well, how do you actually eliminate poverty in Britain? So tell us more, Helen. How do we eliminate it?
Thank you, Sheryl. So to end poverty in Britain, there are two concepts which we need to kind of appreciate. One is you've got to do it in 5 years, because as a government, that's all the time you're going to get. You've got no guarantee of re-election. And the second is, crucially, without raising taxes, because it doesn't matter how it might be blindingly obvious that we need to raise taxes in Britain today. If you say you're going to raise taxes, you will not get elected into government. And if your main crucial aim is to end poverty, then we simply need to find a new way of doing it in 5 years without raising taxes. And that's hard, but it's not impossible.
So how do you do that? How would you do it in 5 years and not raise taxes?
Yeah. Well, I believe there are kind of three core things that you need. You need compassion. You need to get rid of this idea of the undeserving poor, which is a Victorian notion, which has been really helpful to certain politicians over the years, to be able to blame poverty on people's bad decisions. Because if you do that, you then as a politician don't really have to do very much. So it's a kind of lazy version of politics. So that's compassion. Then we need a real focus, a COVID-like, war-like focus. And when you give the civil service in our country that kind of focus, it is an incredibly powerful tool for government, particularly if the plan, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, is in the manifesto and has been elected upon, because then the civil service is obliged to work on it. And the pace at which you can create change as a result of that is incredibly fast. And of course, you need that because you've only got 5 years. So there is no chance to kind of have slackness on this. Now, when it comes to the plan, there's a whole host of things. There's an entire book's worth. But at the back of the book, there is a list of policies. So you don't even have to read it. You just look at the list and it's all there. But some of the options are, I would like to see a minister for the elimination of poverty. And that job needs to be one of the most important jobs in government, alongside Chancellor of the Exchequer and Prime Minister themselves. And they need a department for the elimination of poverty. And there are a host of things that that department can do. The first thing is that they can look at all the government policies that create and maintain people's poverty. And a classic example of this is the 5-week wait for the first universal credit payment, because nobody can survive in our country without money for 5 weeks. And so that automatically puts people into debt if they're not in debt already, and makes their situation worse. So that is a system, in my view, that creates and maintains poverty, and it's very easy to get rid of. And there are a whole host of others. I'd also like to see a national system of exchanges, free exchanges for children's clothes, shoes, toys, books and bedding. I work at, I volunteer at our local exchange project. It's been going 17 years. And you take in, at the moment, it's just 6 items each day. And you can swap them. As long as they're in good condition, you can swap them for any other 6 items. And what this means is that families then not only are sure that they can provide for their families for free, but then it also releases money for other things. And I think that it's one of those really good examples which where the green agenda and the poverty elimination agenda can work together, because they're going to have to, because it's going to be these two issues that take us through this century. So they can't be rubbing up against each other. They have to work in conjunction. Another thing I would like to see is a national helpline, proper helpline for eliminating poverty. So where it's somewhere that you can go and call up, and the person on the other end not only understands an incredibly complicated benefit system that we have, which is regularly wrong. But also people are trained to speak to those in extreme distress and with mental health problems, because poverty and mental health problems are inextricably linked. So there's those. I would also like to see the raising of the Minister for Housing's role into a Secretary of State role. So at the moment, Michael Gove is the Minister for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. And the Housing Minister is a lower job. We have had 7 housing ministers in the last 4 years. We've had 13 housing ministers in the last 15 years. Some of them have only lasted a month. And then we're surprised that we have a massive housing problem. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, on top of all the other problems, the historic issues that we now have, with so much social housing was built in the 1970s that is now essentially going mouldy. And we've had children dying because they are living in mouldy properties. So this is a very serious issue that we need to get to grips with. And I think housing needs to be right up front and centre alongside the poverty elimination programme. There are a whole host of other things that can be done. And these are just a kind of a small number. But I would also like to see new industries being developed. So things like a new hemp industry. Hemp is not cannabis. It doesn't contain enough of the chemical for drug use. But between Henry VIII's era and 1930, we had an enormous hemp industry in Britain. It grows incredibly fast in our country. And it was only because of the creation of the plastics industry that then stopped. But hemp can now be used for a variety of different things, not just food and clothing, but also you can create hempcrete. So you can literally build properties with hemp. You could also put it into things like fiberglass. So it's an incredibly diverse product, and it grows really well here. And I think that, you know, when we talk about supporting the rural economy and rural poverty, it can't just be about transport and about local links. It also needs to be about jobs and creating new products rather than perpetually shipping things in from places like China with massive carbon footprints associated to them. So that's just a variety of the things that can be done. But this idea that poverty is too big a topic to deal with is actually not true. You can just break it down into a list of things that can be done, and gradually, over a course of 5 years, just start to deal with it properly.
Fabulous, fabulous. I'm just going to put that as a reminder. The theme of today's show is all about how do we actually eliminate poverty in Britain, and you have listed them all off there, from compassion. I've got National Helpline, National Systems of Exchange Projects, Minister of Department for Eliminating Poverty, and the Housing Minister to get to grips with housing and also new industries like hemp. So if you're watching this episode, I just want you to sort of think about, you know, what emotions did it bring up for you? You've mentioned today, Helen, that it's not too big a project. It's not too big a problem. We can break it down. We can take steps to it. On the previous video, we talked about why, and it's like it impacts everybody. This is not just the poor's problem. It impacts society as a whole. Therefore, we all have a responsibility. I know that from reading your book and this interview again today, the big thing I'm thinking, like, I could get involved locally with exchange projects. I can do that now. There's things I can do to make my services that would help people get clarity and get out of the mindset and the stuckness they've got, by making my services more available, and not just go back to putting posters up locally, delivering leaflets, instead of putting everything online, where people have to have the money to have broadband to even know that I exist. Actually, there's been things just listening to you that I've gone, do you know what? They are things I could do right now. And I do donate to charity, and I do other things to support local things. But I noticed in order to save money, I stopped doing leaflet drops. I stopped doing posters. And actually, that's where those people, that's how the only way I'm going to reach those people is to actually go out and actually speak to them that way. So thank you so much for your highlights. And I know it's not the extensive thing, but do read the book. Eliminating Poverty in Britain, if you'd like to know the full review of everything we could do as a nation to eliminate poverty in Britain in just 5 years without raising taxes. I think that's a really important thing to remember. So if you have liked this interview today, please like, share, comment, tell your friends about it, because Helen and myself are now on a mission to make sure this debate gets out there and we get more people involved so we can make the difference that will be the difference. Thanks for joining me today.